My project, Things You Can Tell Just by Looking at Him, is a document about my life told across t-shirts. And so with this project, I'm talking about my experiences with various forms of racism. And each t-shirt documents something that was directly said to me personally. Oh, I've always been an artist. I come from a family that's very creative in a variety of different ways. And I studied photography in the States, and I came to Germany to also continue my studies. But along the way, I began working with other mediums. So I also started writing, I started working with paper cuts, and now I work with performance, text-based projects, photography, and also collage. I think that the International Day Against Racism is a good measure, but that measure must be backed up by a plan of action that we carry out throughout the year. So I think it's good to observe this and to think about racism, but obviously there are things that we can do as individuals, things that we can do as communities and societies that focuses on racism and what needs to be done about that, how racism can be dismantled. There's racism, is that real? Of course there's racism, and of course it's real, but I think one of the obstacles that we face, and that I face as an individual who's read as a person of color, who's read as a black person, is that the society that I live in says that it's open, it's tolerant, that there's no such thing as racism, and at the same time, this is a society that perpetuates various forms of power that restrict the life chances, the movements, and the realities of people of color. So I'm dealing with a society that is saying, well, race and racism don't exist, but at the same time, I'm experiencing these moments where I'm walking down the street or I'm at work and I'm confronted with statements like, where do you really come from? I've never slept with a black person before. Even though you're black, you're really beautiful. Black people smell different. So I'm constantly being confronted with these stereotypes, and I'm constantly seeing one-dimensional images of people of color, or I'm not seeing people of color at all. And for me, this is one of the most difficult things about being human and being a person of color, and the levels of denial, apathy, and hostility that I'm met with when I dare to speak about racism, when I dare to make work about it, when I dare to try to change it or to stand up for myself and say, I'm not going to put up with this. I think I'm gay, I can't be racist is one of the most frustrating ideas that I've encountered, because I know as a black man there are lots of things that I'm expected to be or that I'm stereotyped as in terms of practices of discrimination that I'm supposed to exhibit. For example, black men are supposed to be sexist, all of us, transphobic, homophobic, anti-Semitic. I'm gay, I can't be racist ignores the fact that I am black and I am gay as well, and that I'm both, and that there are forms of discrimination that I face because I am black and gay. For example, when I was attacked here in Germany and I went to the police to report being attacked, they didn't even get to hear that it was a hate crime because they so easily dismissed me, and they made a very clear point of saying, in Germany, this is how you make a report, and you're not going about it the right way. Also, in terms of being black and gay, there are forms of discrimination that I face in the gay community, and as an artist, a lot of the institutions that I work for, a lot of the invitations that I receive come from gay white men, and there's a lot of racism that I deal with from people who are also gay. Just because white men or white women and white trans people are gay or trans doesn't mean that they're not capable or incapable of reproducing racism. It doesn't work that way. Just because we have different aspects of our identity where we feel we are marginalized or we experience marginalization doesn't mean that we inherently understand everyone else's struggle and that we are working with them and doing our part to help them as well. It would be nice if that happened, but that's not the way that things always happen, and you can't take that for granted. I think the question of if it's so bad here, why do you stay, implies quite a few things. It implies that if you don't like it, you should just leave. But it doesn't take into account that there are people who are born and raised in any given country that we're talking about, whether we're talking about Germany, Australia, or the United States, that people are born here and feel a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, while at the same time experiencing racism. It also ignores the fact that people have families, people have jobs, people have other opportunities that inspire them to stay in whatever country we're talking about, whatever place we're talking about, while still having to deal with racism. And so when I encounter statements like, if it's so bad here, why do you stay? That gives me a cue or a clue that this person is not really interested in talking about racism or necessarily interested in doing anything about it, more importantly. But we also have to think about the fact that some people don't have the luxury of leaving, and some people don't want to leave because even though they are experiencing racism, they feel that they absolutely belong in the societies that they are a part of. Do I look like I know where you can get some drugs? And if I look like I know where you can get some drugs, why? Particularly when I go into hospitals and I don't see black nurses and black doctors. I go into the bank, I've never seen a black person working as a teller. I don't see black people working as postal workers. I don't know how many black politicians there are in parliament. Basically, I don't see representation of black people that's not stereotypical. And if I ask people who are Germany's national treasures, who are people of color, can you name an author? Can you name a scientist? Can you name somebody who's not doing something that black people or people of color are allowed to do, to be sports figures, to be entertainment, to be dancers? What other roles can we occupy? So where can we get some drugs is a question that I received often, and I think about what my chances are in Germany. If just going to the supermarket, going to an exhibition, going to meet friends, and people are expecting me to have drugs, it tells me a lot about how the society perceives black men. Where do you really come from is a question that I find to be very problematic. So for example, after being asked, where are you from, where do you come from, I might say Los Angeles or California. And then I receive questions like, where do you really come from, or where are your parents from, where are your grandparents from, what are your roots? But I'm a human being, I'm not a tree. Trees have roots, plants have roots, but human beings we have legs and we can move and we can migrate. And this question also implies that I'm lying in a way, that I'm saying that I come from Los Angeles, but that there's some other place that I come from that I'm ashamed of or that I don't want to admit to. But basically this question is also a way of saying, what's your ethnic background? Which I think is a question about race. And so for me, this question is one that I understand when the person is asking me, where do you really come from? They're not identifying me as being someone who can come from the United States. And I also understand that this is not a question that someone who is white is asked, who comes from the United States. They're not asked, wait a minute, you are from Los Angeles, but you're not a native of the States, you're not indigenous, you're not Algonquin, you're not Chippewa, you're not Navajo, so are you British, are you Dutch, are you Scandinavian? Where do you really come from? I understand that I'm being asked this question as a black person. And so the question is not about my nationality, but the question is about race.